think everyone who appreciates drag can agree on the following statements. Drag is the collective art form of the rainbow community, where through movement, costuming, music, and makeup, queer people can tell our unique stories. True? The queer community is fluid and integrated with a wide spectrum of identities and orientations. True? Therefore, when we think about these two statements in relation to one another, it begs a question about the bustling, now mainstream industry of drag artistry and who is over and underrepresented. Nowadays, drag as a career can mean being social media influencers, local, national, and global celebrity status, and political representation for the entire community. I believe what is generally promoted by the professional drag world is not a full and complete picture of the art form's value to all humanity, as it centers the queer male perspective. I believe that there is rich historical context that has gone ignored and a misogynistic imbalance of power that has been allowed to thrive on half informed grounds. We, as a society, still operate within a patriarchy, and this seems to trickle down into our progressive minority community. Even going back to square one, what do people think of when they think of a drag queen? Or even the word drag itself? They think of a man in a dress. Yet, this line of thinking discounts the trans women who popularized the modern art form and all the trans men, cis women, and AFAB people who are participating in gendered performance since literal ancient times. Women and AFAB drag artists are not a new thing. I believe that a community wide lack of education on AFAB people and women's drag history contributes to a community wide discrimination on a local, national, and global level. Things are a little more complex than the ideas that we have allowed to perpetuate. And isn't that the whole point of drag? Hi, I'm Adorable. I am a femme drag artist or drag queen from Nashville, Tennessee. Yes, it is true that generally no one gets drag opportunities handed to them easily, but it would be false to say that people with bodies like mine don't have to work and go above and beyond and show more professionalism, yet simultaneously be loud and annoying to get half of the acknowledgement, all the while being met with resentment for having the audacity to be loud in men's spaces. But it's not just me who feels this way, and it's not just local to my drag community. Drag artists from all over the world echo these same sentiments. Women, trans men, and AFAB drag artists are not going anywhere. We're only going to get louder and more abundant in numbers. There is a deep importance in how this conversation affects our community, and even going a step further, affects LGBTQ plus relations with the general public. This conversation is about more than me being personally upset. This is about systematic hurdles based on how people are born. Within the queer community, there is an understanding that gender and sex exist on complex spectrums. Because of this fluidity, separating things by binary sex gets subjective and confusing. And not to be Captain Obvious, but intersex people exist, and they inherently challenge the sex and gender binaries by existing, and some of them do drag. Drag is the exaggeration and protest of gender stereotypes. It's a political statement meant to say, gender is a construct, so do what you want and spread radical self-acceptance. Constricting the bodies of the artists underneath the paint, lashes, stashes, whatever you wear, to binary sex boxes defeats the whole purpose of gender and sex not restricting and confining us. And the audience doesn't need to know what's in our pants. Speaking of, bio queen, faux queen, and hyper queen, and in some regions of the US, diva, are all words that have come about to describe a female drag queen. The term diva is mostly used in queer pageant systems in the South to signify a separate category for female drag queens because they cannot compete with male drag queens. Up front, I will say that some people self-identify with these terms, whether to find community on social media or to represent the aforementioned pageant systems. And in my opinion, these are the only acceptable ways to use these terms, is when you are describing yourself. Except for bio queen, Can we just omit this one completely? It just feels like a mad scientist experiment and transphobic at worst. It's a problem when people want to label all AFAB people who do feminine drag anything other than drag queens, as if we must have a separate distinction. The problem is when people don't think that AFAB people should be recognized as real drag queens and that we should not be able to compete or perform alongside our male peers. We don't need a prefix, a suffix, a whole new title, or a whole new show just because we were born with it. We are all affected by homophobia. We are all targeted for our audacity to love ourselves, our expression, our femininity, and our queerness, and we all seek a space to do so safely with people who understand. There is no reason that we cannot share the same stage and label for our art, except for reasons rooted in misogyny and transphobia. In good faith, I have to go over some arguments that I have heard, some of them having genuine basis to them, however misguided. I want to break these statements down and explain how they are reductive and harmful.
People without facial hair, people who have naturally fatter chests, and people who don't have to tuck have it easier to transform into a drag queen. So it's cheating, or it's not as impressive.
AFAB people and women don't always have a natural hourglass figure or are confident with makeup, fashion, femininity, and stage presence. And sometimes we can even have facial and body hair. Drag queens are based off of a stereotype of women that was created by the male gaze. It is a misogynistic ideology to think that women and AFAB people wake up looking like polished drag queens. Yes, our bodies are all different, but our bodies are all different even within our own demographics. It gets pointless to compare things tit for tat. Depending on so many factors like genetics, aesthetics, and presentation in and out of drag, it's literally all subjective on what anyone defines as easier. It's not about our bodies, it's how we use them and the skills we learn with them. So the "we're built different" argument is weak in my opinion. Ultimately, there is no difference between a male and a female drag queen except for skin and organs, which has no bearing on being an entertaining drag artist.
Gay men need their own separate space to express and celebrate femininity safely because they cannot do so in daily life.
I'm gonna need you to lean in close. Come on, come on. As far as I know, there is no such place to celebrate femininity safely for anyone. Femininity will always be dangerous and will always make you a target no matter what's in your pants. Plus, when I'm in drag, the bigots can't tell the difference between me and any other drag queen. I have had things thrown at me. I have been called the F word out of truck windows. I have been followed around with bullhorns at pride events. And for mental health purposes, you shouldn't read some of my comment sections. And personally, I am threatened for being feminine, queer, and confident in and out of drag. And I don't believe that trauma should be a competition, but how can anyone believe that women are ever safe to celebrate their femininity? Especially queer women. Where is our space to celebrate our femininity safely? Lesbian bars? Well, there are 21 lesbian bars in the entire country of the United States, according to a census done in 2019. There is one in my state, and surprise, surprise, the drag shows are run by men there too. But again, why are we attempting to divide up the queer community by lesbian bars and gay bars and lesbian shows and gay shows? To them, we are all the same. So when someone says we need our own separate spaces, I just hear, I want drag to continue to be a boys' club and blatantly ignore the diversity and fluidity of our community. There is no queer solidarity in that statement. Drag is something that people outside of our queer community already recognize. Modern AFAB drag queens and kings can't reinvent another wheel that already exists. I mean, we very well could start our own shows, and we will, but our audiences are going to be the same as any other drag show.
It's only subversive when it's a man in a dress. Women are already allowed to wear dresses.
Gay men have been targeted for wearing the dress, which I will use as a metaphor for displaying any sort of femininity. And I don't doubt that this carries complex trauma. And I don't say but because these two facts do not compete, they merely coexist. And women especially queer women, have been targeted for wearing the dress or for not wearing the dress, and sometimes in spite of literally whatever we wear. Personally, when I see the dress, literally or figuratively, I am reminded of how I was expected to wear it, where I was seen as an object with easy access. Hips, breasts, tiny waists, long legs shoved into tiny pointed little shoes are all standards that the demographic of women and AFAB people have been subjected to and objectified for. It is subversive and cathartic for me to reclaim these aspects with my art in a way that I control for the queer gaze. Can we stop comparing our scars and put on the dang sparkles?
Women and AFAB people can do burlesque, cosplay, or become makeup artists, etc.
Yes. Yes, I can, and I have. The art forms of drag and burlesque can be similar, and they can even include elements of each other, but they are not the same thing. For instance, they don't generally lip sync to songs, which is a huge staple of drag. Not to mention that burlesque audiences can sometimes favor the male gaze, which is totally fine, but just not everyone's cup of tea. It's also not just for women. Men can do burlesque, non binary people can do burlesque, anyone can do burlesque. Some artists can even dabble in both drag and burlesque, calling themselves draglesque artists. What I find telling, though, is that people would imply that all women and AFAB people looking to perform femininity are okay with an art form implying the removal of clothing, as if we should just be okay with our bodies being sexualized baseline. Along the same lines of burlesque, women and AFAB people who do femme drag can also hear you're just a cosplayer or you're just a makeup artist. However, the same arguments apply to all. They may have overlapping qualities. These are separate artistic fields with separate audiences, and some artists can be more than one. Trixie Mattel and Kimchi are both makeup artists and drag artists, and plenty of artists consider themselves both cosplayers and drag artists. I deserve to perform for a queer audience who understands drag, and queer audiences deserve to hear from my demographic's perspective.
AFAB drag artists, both kings and queens, are generally not as polished.
So, this section is speaking more broadly to what show directors use as excuses to not hiring all AFAB people, kings and queens alike. Disenfranchisement. Queer women and AFAB people have been a little busy for the last 100 years or so with multiple intersectional civil rights movements. Only recently in history gained the right to vote, own bank accounts, and have bodily autonomy outside of the men that controlled us. It really shouldn't be a surprise that our recorded involvements in the 21st century liberal arts directly correlated to our social standing in society. Especially the intersectionally marginalized did not have the financial opportunities to become career drag artists or start gay clubs or be as prominent in the scene. Drag is expensive. And I don't need to remind you that women and AFAB people still make less at our day jobs and are expected to do more domestic labor, which cuts down on our available time and funds to be in the liberal arts, comparatively speaking. Even when we do have the courage, finances, and opportunity to become performing career drag artists, we are sometimes not as easily welcome in the close knit backstage culture, sharing trade secrets, rubbing shoulders with the right people in charge, and we're generally seen as annoying if we try to work our way up and ask questions. This is how disenfranchisement works. This is literally how it works. Even with years of experience and titles, AFAB drag artists are not considered for higher profile opportunities and higher profile drag lineups, and we are often given pushback for even asking about it. We are only given space in big drag shows when there's plenty of room. We see these things, and it affects the numbers of us willing to pursue this art form seriously or continue this art form seriously. However, even though our numbers are less, that doesn't mean that we don't exist and that we aren't successful. AFAB drag artists all over the world are finding success online and have been recognized nationally and globally and have been on and won various calibers of reality TV shows.
There is not an audience for you. Only gay men love drag, and they don't want to see women.
How many gay men in the audience are bi or pan and would love a little more variety on the social commentary that the art form of drag provides? How many straight people love going to popular gay spots on a Friday and Saturday night, but have no clue that there are also female drag queens and kings to support in the community because these artists are all allocated to weeknights or niche bars? How many drag brunches are held in open to the public restaurants that are not just catered to gay men, that are actually mostly catered to tourists and bachelorette parties? Book and promote your local AFAB artists regularly, and you will see that we can grow audiences too. A lot of women and AFAB people still in 2023 feel like we do not own our image and our bodies. Let's not let the art form of drag contribute to that, because it's certainly not supposed to. With all the media and regulations all over the world on women's bodies and beauty standards, if drag is restricted to only men taking the stereotypical embodiment of the feminine form and performing the personification of it on stage, then turning around and denying women and AFAB people the same artistic commentary, what does that look like? Actually, I'll tell you what it looks like. It could look like another double standard that women and AFAB people have to face every day. The stereotypical embodiment of the image the male gaze created in the first place can only be attained in its most powerful, sparkly, artistic form by men. I say screw that narrative. Drag and feminism absolutely go hand in hand. Artistic queer femininity, but especially just femininity in any form, is not something that men should ever own. Any person of any demographic should be able to claim or reclaim femininity on stage, because that is what makes drag so beautiful, is everyone's unique interpretation of what femininity or masculinity or any of it means to you in an artistic way. I am not here to attack anyone. Not all gay men are misogynistic, but we all fit into a system that favors men over women. I'd like to end with a call to action. We must individually assess and dismantle how we play a role in the system. If you are a gay man, and especially a performing drag queen, it is your job to look around you and speak up if the shows you are a part of are not hiring women, AFAB queens, or kings. It is your job to educate others around you and speak up when we are not allowed to be in the room. If you are a bar that can afford to fly in and book a RuPaul girl on a Friday and Saturday night, then you can also afford to keep that same energy for AFAB artists who also win national pageants and titles and have global and national recognition. And finally, you. Yes, you. Speak up around you if you notice that the shows that you regularly attend and enjoy are not being diverse. We cannot afford to speak over each other. We can't afford to contribute to the misinformation that surrounds our queer community. Drag is the artistic expression of gender commentary, and everyone should have a voice in that. We are all affected by the gender stereotypes and negativity of misogyny, transphobia, and homophobia. And that's what leads us to the art form, for expression. Becoming a more inclusive community is absolutely possible. Thank you for listening to me. I've been adorable, and I'll see you next time.
Hi, my name's Cherry May from Portland, Oregon, and my drag is energetic. My drag is upside down.
My drag is strong.
My drag is fucking revolutionary.
My drag is a lot more than valid. My drag is bookable.
My drag is cathartic.
My drag is empowering.
My drag is that thing that you sent to someone on Instagram at 3 a.m.
My drag is an escape.
My drag is important.
My drag is expansive.
My drag is goth, my drag is bimbo-core, my drag is slutty, and my drag is definitely nerdy.
My drag is human.
My drag is activism.
There are a lot of ways that I love to describe my drag. Colorful with a little twist of edge.
My drag is non-binary artistry, always.
And my drag is croon-worthy.
My drag is marvelous.
Femininity. 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 Anyway, okay.